The bank manager didn't blink when he saw the brass key in my palm. He didn't smile. He didn't ask how my day was going. He leaned toward the teller and said, very quietly, "Call the police." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. The lobby was too clean for that sentence. Soft carpet, cold air, a little bowl of peppermints on the counter like a peace offering. Behind me, an elderly man in a tiger's cap folded his deposit slip with the patience of somebody who still believes systems work. The teller's eyes snapped up to mine. Her polite smile vanished so fast it looked like it had never existed. "Ma'am," she said, voice suddenly careful, "can you please have a seat?" "I'm just here for a safe deposit box," I managed. "It belonged to my grandmother." The manager stepped out from behind the glass, suit sharp, shoulders squared. He didn't touch me, but he angled his body so the exit was no longer a straight line. He glanced at my driver's license, then at the key tag. "Ms. Brooks," he said, "don't go anywhere." That sentence wasn't a request. It was a lock clicking into place. My name is Tiana Brooks. I'm 36, and I work in compliance, contracts, audits, and the kind of paperwork that teaches you where people hide their sins. I'm used to tense conference rooms, not bank lobbies. I'm used to strangers lying for money, not family. But the key in my hand wasn't just metal. It was the last move my grandmother made before she died. Miss Eve, Evelyn Brooks, lived 87 years with a spine like rebar. She paid bills on time, kept receipts in neat stacks, and treated signatures like sacred things. She loved gospel music, strong coffee, and saying what she meant. "Paper tells the truth when people won't," she told me once, tapping her checkbook register. "And don't let anybody rush you. If they rush you, they're hiding something." The funeral was yesterday. The chapel smelled like lilies and carpet cleaner. People hugged me and called me baby and told me she was in a better place. My Aunt Denise ran the whole day like she ran everything, fast, efficient, and performed for an audience. Black dress, perfect hair, perfect tears that arrived on cue and disappeared when she turned away. Denise Caldwell was the caregiver the last few years. She drove Miss Eve to appointments. She filled prescriptions. She answered the phone and told everybody, "Mama's resting," until resting started to look like isolation. The neighbors praised her. The church ladies called her a blessing. Even the hospice nurse told me, "Your aunt is devoted." I wanted to believe that, because the alternative was ugly. After the repast, ham, mac and cheese, paper plates stacked high, Denise moved through Miss Eve's house like she'd already measured the rooms. She opened drawers. She made piles of mail. She snapped at my cousin Jamal to carry boxes to his truck. I went into the kitchen for water. The clock over the stove ticked too loud, and the trash can by the pantry was overflowing with funeral debris, crumpled napkins, plastic forks, an obituary program bent in half. On the counter sat a small brown envelope, old and thin. Something metallic flashed inside when the light hit it. I reached for it without thinking. "Leave that." Denise's voice cut through the room. When I turned, she was in the doorway, and her face wasn't wearing the funeral mask anymore. Her eyes were sharp. Quick math, not grief. "What is it?" I asked. "Old junk," she said, stepping closer. "Mama kept every scrap of nonsense. Keys that don't open anything. You should have buried half this house with her." She grabbed the envelope. I tightened my grip, more instinct than defiance, and the paper tore. A brass key dropped onto the counter with a bright final clink. A flat metal tag hung from the ring. Stamped into it, 19B. Denise snatched the key so fast my fingers stung. For one clean heartbeat, fear flashed across her face. Real fear, sharp as heat. Then she covered it with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "See?" she said. "Junk." And she tossed it into the trash can. Not gently, not like something sentimental she couldn't bear to keep. She threw it like it burned. My stomach dropped. "We're selling the house," she added, voice brisk again. "Appraiser's coming next week. Don't go digging around. If you want a keepsake, take a picture." She walked out like she'd closed the subject. I waited until her footsteps faded down the hall. Then I reached into the trash. Napkins were damp. Someone had spilled punch. A half-eaten deviled egg slid against my knuckles. I felt ridiculous. 36 years old, a professional woman, digging through garbage on the day after a funeral. Then my fingers closed around cold brass. I pulled the key out and wiped it on my sleeve. It looked ordinary, and yet my aunt had thrown it away like it could ruin her. I slipped it into my pocket. An hour later, I told Denise I had a headache and needed to go home. She hugged me too tight, perfume thick and sweet, and whispered, "Get some rest, baby. You've been through a lot." I smiled into her shoulder and thought, "So have you. You just don't know it yet." On the drive back to my apartment, rain misted the windshield, turning Cleveland into a gray smear. The key sat heavy in my pocket, and my mind did what it always does when something doesn't add up. It started building scenarios. Miss Eve wasn't flashy. She didn't trust the stock market. She split money between a credit union and one place nobody knows. But I'd always pictured cash hidden in a coffee can, not a safe deposit box. And Denise wasn't afraid of junk. Denise was afraid of paperwork she couldn't control. I'd seen that fear in my job. The way people rush you to sign, the way they dismiss documents as old or confusing, while their hands shake just enough to notice. There's a name for what it looks like when family hides behind caregiving and starts treating an elder's life like an account to manage. Elder financial exploitation. It shows up in training modules and court filings. It hides in phrases like, "I'm just helping." It lives in power of attorney abuse, forged signatures, and probate court conservatorship petitions that turn a person into a ward. It always sounded like somebody else's tragedy. Not mine. Not Miss Eve's. At home, I set the key on my kitchen table and stared at the tag. 19B. No bank name, no address. Just a number and the faint outline of a logo I couldn't quite read. I could have called Denise and asked like a normal niece. But normal nieces don't watch their aunts throw keys away like evidence, so I did what my grandmother trained me to do. I read the signs. I didn't rush, and I didn't warn the person who seemed scared. At 8:30 this morning, I walked into Lakeview Community Credit Union with my umbrella dripping and my throat tight. The lobby was bright and quiet. A muted TV played the news. A bowl of suckers sat on a table, cheerful as a lie. A young teller with a neat bun smiled at me and said, "Good morning. How can we help you?" I slid my ID across the counter, then the brass key. "I need to access a safe deposit box," I said. "My grandmother, Evelyn Brooks, passed yesterday." The teller took the key. Her smile held for 1 second, and then disappeared. Her eyes flicked to a screen I couldn't see. Her fingers tightened around the key tag. The color drained from her face like somebody pulled a plug. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Just one moment, ma'am." She picked up the internal phone and said something under her breath. 20 seconds later, the manager appeared. Mr. Harrison Reed. Good suit. Calm eyes. The kind of calm that doesn't come from kindness. It comes from procedure. He looked at the key, then at me, like he was matching my face to a file. His jaw tightened. "Call the police," he told the teller. Then he turned to me, polite as a blade. "Ms. Brooks," he said, "this safe deposit box is flagged in our security system. Please don't go anywhere." He guided me to a chair in the corner, far enough from the door to feel intentional. A security guard drifted near the entrance and pretended he wasn't watching. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, trying to breathe like a person who hadn't just been flagged. The key tag pressed a red half-moon into my thumb. Behind the counter, a printer whirred. Paper sliding out. Paper. Always paper. My grandmother's favorite witness. Mr. Reed returned holding a thin folder, his calm turning sharper around the edges. "This isn't about you walking in with an old key," he said. "It's about what that box is tied to. There's a security hold." "A hold for what?" I asked. He paused, then chose his words like he was stepping around glass. "There was an attempted access a few years ago. Someone presented documentation. Power of attorney paperwork." My throat tightened. And it was valid? Our verification didn't match, he said. Signature issues, enough to trigger a report. Denise's hand flashed in my mind. How fast she ripped the envelope. How fast she threw the key away, like she'd touched heat. So you think? I'm not here to accuse anyone, Mr. Reed cut in, polite but firm. But this falls under bank fraud investigation protocol. An officer will speak with you. Until then, we need you to remain on site. Protocol. Investigation. Officer. Words that didn't belong to Miss Eve's life. She was church hats and coupon books, lemon pledge on Sundays, humming while she balanced her checkbook. She was the woman who warned me, if they rush you, they're hiding something. And now, because of her, the bank had shifted into hurry. And right then, sitting in that spotless lobby with a dead woman's key in my hand, I understood something that made my skin go cold. My grandmother didn't leave me a keepsake. She left me a trigger. If you're still here, don't you dare click away. Because what was inside box 19B wasn't just cash or jewelry. It was the kind of evidence that turns family dinners into crime scenes. Hit like if you've ever felt that cold twist when someone says, "Trust me," and your body says, "Don't." And in the comments, tell me what city you're watching from and what time it is right now, so I know how far this story reaches. Mr. Reed left me in that corner chair like a file that needed processing, not a grieving granddaughter with yesterday's funeral still clinging to my clothes. The lobby kept breathing around me, printers sighing, coins dropping, a toddler fussing, ordinary sounds that suddenly felt staged. I watched the glass doors in case my Aunt Denise came sweeping in, smiling too wide, saying she'd handle it. But Denise didn't come. Denise always moved when nobody could see the strings. So while I waited for the police in a bank that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and new carpet glue, my mind ran backward, pulling on threads I'd ignored because grief makes you tired, and denial is a soft place to hide. Yesterday, at the house after the repast, Denise's grief looked perfect from across the room. Handkerchief, soft voice, a public sorrow measured in teaspoons. But in the kitchen, when that torn envelope spit out the brass key and the tag stamped 19B, her face changed in one blink. Surprise, recognition, then something colder, calculation. She tossed it into the trash like it was evidence, then warned me not to dig around because the appraiser was coming. That's when the safe deposit box mystery hooked itself under my ribs. In my world, people dismiss paper when they're afraid of what it proves. They throw away keys when the key opens a story they already rewrote. If Denise was innocent, she would have left it sitting there, harmless today. People love to call my grandmother old-fashioned. What they meant was, Miss Eve believed in receipts, signatures, and consequences. She believed the world didn't forgive you just because you meant well. Evelyn Brooks lived 87 years with a spine like rebar. She wasn't flashy, and she wasn't helpless. She was steady, because she built her life that way on purpose. When I was little, she kept the books for Mount Zion's auxiliary committee. Sunday collections, bake sale money, repairs to the fellowship hall. She treated that ledger like scripture. I can still see her at the dining table, reading glasses on, a single lamp making a warm circle over rows of numbers. "Come here, Ty," she'd say, patting the chair beside her. "Look close. If I write it down, it happened. If I don't, it's a rumor." Back then, I thought she was teaching me math. Later, I understood she was teaching me how to survive people. Denise Caldwell, Miss Eve's youngest, was pretty, quick, and always a little bored. The kind of bored that turns into trouble when it finds opportunity. After my mother died, Miss Eve became my anchor. She called to check on me like it was her job. "Who's with you? Where are you? Did you sign anything?" she'd ask, as if paperwork could bite. I work in compliance now. Contracts, audits, and the kind of corporate language that looks harmless until you notice the sentence that eats somebody alive. My job is to stare at paper until it confesses. I've seen the pattern: rush the vulnerable, flatter them, isolate them, then say, "Don't worry, I got you." There's a name for the ugliest version of that pattern: elder financial exploitation. It doesn't kick a door in, it wears a smile and carries groceries. It slides into power of attorney abuse and ends up in probate court with the clean title of conservatorship. Miss Eve hated being handled. Even when her knees started swelling, she refused to move in with Denise. "I'll die in my own bed," she said, chin up like a challenge. "And I don't need nobody counting my steps." Denise tried anyway, soft at first. "Mama, it's too much house." Then sharper. "Mama, you being stubborn." Then sweet again when sharp didn't work. Denise could switch faces like other people switch purses. Jamal helped her. My cousin was 33, handsome and restless, always chasing the next thing. When Miss Eve's car got totaled in a fender bender, Jamal started showing up more. "Just checking on Grandma," he'd say, eyes flicking to the keys on the hook by the door. Then, about 5 years ago, Miss Eve started having appointments, not for her knees, for her mind. Denise called me one afternoon with that careful voice she uses when she wants to sound responsible. "Ty, I'm worried. Mama's forgetting things." "What things?" I asked. "Little things," she said quickly. "Where she put her purse. What day it is. I just want to keep her safe." That last sentence landed too neatly, like a slogan. I called Miss Eve that night. She answered on the second ring, voice clear as ever. "Who told you I forgot to eat?" she demanded, before I even said hello. Denise said, "That girl," Miss Eve snapped. Then her tone dropped into something quieter. "I mixed up Tuesday and Wednesday one time, and now she got a whole story." "Do you feel confused?" I asked. "I feel irritated," she said, "and tired of people acting like age is a crime." Life kept moving, and Denise used that momentum the way a thief uses a crowd. First, she helped with bills. "Autopay," she said, "so Mama don't miss nothing." Then she started screening calls. When I called and Miss Eve didn't answer, Denise texted, "Resting. Doctor says no stress." Then the church ladies told me Denise was handling everything now. They said it like praise. One Sunday I stopped by unannounced. Miss Eve opened the door herself, robe on, hair wrapped. She looked surprised to see me, but not confused. Her eyes were sharp, annoyed. Inside, the counter held a stack of mail, opened neatly. Too neatly. A file folder lay beside it, labeled in Denise's handwriting, medical. Miss Eve saw me staring. Her mouth tightened. "She thinks if she can get a doctor to say something," she said, "she can get a judge to say something." "A judge?" I repeated. Miss Eve turned away and put a kettle on the stove with a clank that ended the conversation. She was proud. When she felt cornered, she went quiet. A few months later, Denise called again, voice trembling with performance. "Ty, Mama had a scare. The doctor says she needs supervision." "What happened?" I asked. "She left the stove on," Denise said. "She could have burned the whole house down." When I asked Miss Eve, she stared at me for a long moment, then said, "I boiled water and turned the wrong knob. It didn't even light." Denise saw smoke that wasn't there. Smoke that wasn't there. That's how the pipeline gets built. One exaggeration becomes a note becomes a diagnosis becomes a packet for probate court, a packet becomes a judge's signature becomes a cage. Miss Eve knew what it looked like, too. One evening, when Denise stepped outside to take a call, Miss Eve grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong. "I'm not crazy," she whispered. "If they say I'm crazy, you don't believe them." "Why would they say that?" I asked, my heartbeat suddenly loud. Miss Eve's eyes flicked toward the window. "Because it's profitable." I told myself she was being paranoid. I told myself families fight and then they make up. But my gut wouldn't stop tapping, so I started saving things anyway. Screenshots, texts, dates. Now, sitting in Lakeview Community Credit Union with a safe deposit box key and a bank fraud investigation unfolding in real time, I understood my grandmother had been saving things too. Only better. Mr. Reed finally returned and asked me to follow him into a small office with frosted glass. The chair was too low. The air conditioning ran cold like punishment. "I need to ask you some questions," he said, opening a thin folder. Answer carefully. Carefully, another word that means, this is bigger than you think. He confirmed my grandmother's name, her date of death, my relationship to her. He asked if I knew of any power of attorney documents. He asked if anyone had been acting on her behalf. I pictured Denise's medical folder. I pictured Jamal's eyes on the keys. I pictured the way Denise threw the brass key into the trash like it could scream. I don't know, I said, which was true in the way a half-truth is true. But I want to find out. Mr. Reed's gaze held mine. Sometimes, he said quietly, the people who commit financial fraud against elders are the ones sitting closest to them at the funeral. Outside the office, the lobby doors opened. Heavier footsteps crossed the carpet. A radio crackled, and the part of me that still wanted this to be a misunderstanding finally, reluctantly, went silent. The officer who came through the glass doors didn't look like a man expecting violence. He looked like a man expecting lies. Steady eyes, calm shoulders, a radio murmuring on his chest like a second heartbeat. Mr. Reed met him halfway across the lobby, speaking low, as if sound itself could trigger alarms. This is Ms. Tiana Brooks, Reed said. She presented the key for Box 19 Bravo. The box is flagged. The officer glanced at me, then at the key tag on Reed's desk. Ma'am, he said, I'm Officer Caldwell. No relation, he added quickly when my face shifted. We just need to ask a few questions. No relation. The universe had a mean sense of humor. They guided me into a back office with plain walls and a table worn smooth by other people's bad mornings. Reed sat across from me. Caldwell stood by the door like punctuation. I kept my hands flat on the tabletop. In my line of work, nervous hands get translated into guilt. I'm here because my grandmother died yesterday, I said. I found a key. I came to access her safe deposit box. Reed's eyes flicked to a thin folder. The reason we contacted law enforcement is prior activity connected to this box, he said. It's part of a bank fraud investigation we reported. We're required to notify authorities if anyone attempts access. Prior activity, I repeated. The words felt clinical, but my stomach understood them as danger. What happened? Reed slid a page toward me. An internal report, neat and bland, the kind of paper that pretends it's just procedure while it quietly detonates lives. In April of 2022, he said, someone presented a power of attorney and requested entry into Box 19 Bravo. The documentation was reviewed. The signature did not match the signature on file for Ms. Evelyn Brooks. Access was denied. The box was flagged. My throat tightened. Who was it? Caldwell cleared his throat. Ms. Brooks, we don't want to. I'm not asking you to want anything, I cut in, voice sharper than grief. I'm asking for a name. Reed didn't flinch. Denise Caldwell, he said. The room went quiet in a way that felt physical, like the air had been replaced with glass. Denise, my aunt, the devoted caregiver, the woman who had thrown the key into the trash yesterday like it burned. That's my aunt, I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Officer Caldwell's posture stayed calm, but his eyes sharpened. Do you believe your aunt attempted to access your grandmother's property unlawfully? I heard Miss Eve's voice in my head, soft but unmovable. If they rush you, they're hiding something. Denise had rushed. She'd rushed to control the house, the story, the leftovers, the memories, and she'd rushed to bury that key in garbage. I don't know exactly what she did, I said carefully, but I know she didn't want me to have that key. Reed leaned forward. There's more, he said. After the denial, we placed a security hold. Entry requires additional verification. We also documented the incident and notified the County Financial Crimes Unit. Elder financial exploitation had always sounded like a headline from somewhere else. Now it sat at the table with me, wearing my aunt's name like a mask. Caldwell asked for the death certificate and proof of relationship. I had them, because Miss Eve raised me and because I don't walk into any building that can ruin me without a folder. While they reviewed my documents, I stared at the edge of the table and forced my breathing to slow. I thought about yesterday's kitchen, ham grease cooling on paper plates, Denise's perfect funeral tears, and the moment her face cracked when the key hit the counter. Surprise, recognition, fear. Then that quick, cold calculation that told me I was holding something she'd already tried to get. 27 minutes later, the detective arrived. She didn't come in loud. She came in certain. Mid-40s, hair pulled back, blazer over plain clothes, badge clipped to her belt. Her eyes took the room in one sweep. Me, Reed, Caldwell. And in that single glance, I felt myself filed into a category: witness, family, risk. Detective Marcia Lane, she said. Financial crimes. Her handshake was brief. Her grip said she didn't do comfort. Ms. Brooks, Lane said, opening a notebook. Tell me how you got the key. So I told her, the funeral, the envelope, the brass key dropping onto the counter, Denise's hand moving too fast, the trash can, my fingers digging through damp napkins. Lane wrote without interruption, her pen moving like it already knew the shape of the story. When I finished, she looked up. Do you have the key on you? I slid it across. She pulled on gloves before touching it, examined the tag, and nodded once. 19 Bravo, she murmured. Okay. Reed cleared his throat. Detective, with your authorization, we can go to the vault. Lane's gaze stayed on me. Before we open anything, you need to understand what this becomes, she said. If the box contains evidence, we treat it like evidence. Chain of custody, no souvenirs. I swallowed. Okay. Also, she added, I need to ask, was your grandmother under any guardianship, conservatorship, or did anyone claim a power of attorney over her finances? I thought of the folder labeled medical at Miss Eve's house, the way Denise screened calls, the way Miss Eve had gripped my wrist months ago and whispered, I'm not crazy. I don't have paperwork, I said, but I believe my aunt was building something. She was controlling. Lane's mouth tightened. That's often how it starts, she said, almost to herself. Isolation. Then paperwork. Then the court labels the elder confused. Then the money moves. Money moves, quietly, like dripping water you don't notice until the floor collapses. Lane stood. Let's go, she said. The vault was 2 doors and a keypad away, each beep sounding like a countdown. Cold air hit my face when the second door opened. Metal, paper, dryness. Rows of boxes lined the walls like silent mouths. Reed found 19B and slid it out on a tray. 2 keys, he said. Yours and the bank's. My fingers were numb as I took the brass key. It fit with a small, precise click. Reed inserted his bank key. We turned together. The latch released with a soft sigh. Lane leaned in, camera phone already up, documenting. Open it, she told Reed. The lid lifted. There were no jewels, no dramatic stacks of cash. Just what my grandmother always trusted most. Paper. A thick manila envelope sealed with tape, my nickname written across it in Miss Eve's careful hand. T.I. A smaller envelope marked, If anything happens. A flash drive in a clear sleeve, and a clipped stack of court forms, probate court language, the kind I recognized like a bad smell. Petition, evaluation, order. Lane didn't let me touch anything. She photographed each item, then placed them on the tray like evidence bricks. When she turned the envelope and my name stared up at me, something in my chest cracked. She knew, I whispered. Lane's eyes flicked to me. She planned, she said. Not everyone gets the chance. Back in the office, Lane opened the envelope marked T.I. with a small blade. Inside was a letter and photocopies, bank statements, notes, and a handwritten page in my grandmother's slanted script. Lane slid the letter toward me. Read, she said. You can read quietly. Just don't remove it. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. My sweet T. If you are reading this, it means you didn't let them rush you. It means you listened to your gut instead of their mouths. I'm leaving you what I couldn't say out loud without them calling me confused. For the last years, Denise has tried to take my voice with doctors and judges. She wanted a conservatorship so she could protect me, but what she protected was access. I refused to sign what I didn't understand, so she made paperwork speak for me. The box has copies. The drive has originals. Do not trust Denise. Do not trust Jamal. Go to Detective Lane. She knows. She has my statement. Paper tells the truth when people won't. Love, Miss Eve. My breath came out as a thin, broken sound. Lane watched me, face unreadable, but her eyes sharpened when her name appeared. You knew her? I rasped. Lane nodded. She came to us, she said. Quietly, prepared. She filed a report. We opened a case. The safe deposit box was part of her plan. My grandmother had treated her own family like a threat assessment, and she'd done it with the same steadiness she used to balance church funds. Lane opened the smaller envelope. Inside was a notarized statement, Miss Eve's signature neat and strong, detailing what Denise had done. Isolating her, pressuring signatures, controlling appointments, attempting to gain legal authority through probate court. Then Lane lifted the court forms. The signature line for Evelyn Brooks was there, and the signature on it was wrong, too heavy, too hesitant, like someone copying a melody they didn't understand. Forged signature, I said, voice flat. Lane nodded. That's our working theory, she said. But theory isn't enough. We build proof. She held up the flash drive. This matters, she said. We'll copy it, analyze it, and secure it. If it contains recordings, emails, account numbers, anything, we treat it carefully. Tell me what to do, I said. Lane's gaze locked on mine. Cooperate, she said, fully. That means you don't confront your aunt. You don't tell your cousin. You act normal. We need them calm so they don't shred, delete, or move money. Families coordinate stories faster than criminals do. I swallowed. I can do that. Good, she said. Now give me everything you have. Texts, voicemails, notes, any proof of isolation, any mention of doctors, any hint of power of attorney abuse. I forwarded Miss Eve's voicemails to Lane's secure email. I sent screenshots of Denise's texts. Resting. Doctor says no stress. Can't talk. Lane watched me build the timeline and nodded like she recognized the language. Before I left, Reed printed the copy of the power of attorney Denise had tried to use in 2022. The notary stamp looked clean. The witness lines looked tidy. The signature looked like a costume. Lane took it without expression. Thank you, she said to Reed, and in her tone was a warning. You did the right thing. Outside, the rain had turned to a thin mist. I drove home with my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I expected rage. What I felt was grief turning into something sharper, because the people who called me baby and served me plates at holidays had been turning my grandmother into a line item. That night, I opened my laptop and started a document titled EB Timeline. I wrote down every date that mattered, every appointment, every time Denise said resting, every time Miss Eve hinted at judges and paperwork. Then I logged into Miss Eve's online banking portal. She kept her password taped under a desk drawer because she believed in hiding things in plain sight. The withdrawals weren't dramatic at first. 200, 500, ATM cash pulls near Denise's neighborhood, payments to a home care company with a slick name and a disconnected number. A check cleared to a vendor my grandmother never mentioned. Drips, not floods, exactly how elder financial exploitation hides. I sent Lane screenshots and notes. Her response came after midnight. Keep going. Before Sunday came, I did one thing I hadn't allowed myself to do yet. I went back to Miss Eve's house alone. I told myself it was for practical reasons. I needed her spare keys so I could water the plants. I needed to grab the quilt she'd promised me. I needed to make sure the refrigerator wasn't full of food that would rot into a smell the neighbors could point to, like proof of neglect. All of those reasons were true. The real reason was simpler and uglier. I needed to see whether Denise had already stripped the place clean. Miss Eve's neighborhood still looked the same: brick ranches, chain link fences, front porches with plastic chairs that had been sun-bleached into surrender. Her house sat quiet with the curtains half drawn, like it was holding its breath. The lock turned too easily, and I hated that my aunt had been the one with the key the whole time. Inside, the air smelled faintly of furniture polish and the last bouquet from the funeral, lilies sweet enough to rot. The silence in the hallway felt louder than the service had. I moved room to room without turning on extra lights, like someone trespassing in her own grief. In the kitchen, the mail slot was empty. Denise had redirected deliveries or collected them early. On the dining table, Miss Eve's checkbook was gone. So was the little tin where she kept stamps and emergency cash for the Lord and the lights, as she used to joke. In the living room, her Bible was still there, open to the same passage as if time had stopped mid-sentence. But the side table drawer, the one where she kept her church ledger, had been cleaned out so thoroughly it looked staged. Denise moved fast. That was always her advantage. She didn't need to understand a thing to take it. She only needed to recognize what might matter later and remove it before someone else did. Miss Eve moved differently. She hid important things inside boring things because she knew the world was impatient. People don't search what doesn't glitter. I went to the back bedroom closet and pulled down a shoebox labeled taxes. It was exactly where it had always been, on the top shelf, shoved behind winter blankets. Denise hadn't found it because it looked like work. Inside were neat stacks, receipts, old W-2s, property tax slips, and then, at the bottom, a manila folder with my grandmother's handwriting, "Do not let Denise see." My hands went cold. I opened it on the floor, right there beside the closet like a kid hiding from punishment. The folder held copies of letters Miss Eve had written to the probate court clerk, contesting a petition. It held a list of dates and names, people who came by and were turned away, people who called and were told she was resting. My name appeared twice, underlined hard enough to dent the paper. T.I. called. Denise answered. There was also a page of notes titled, "Money Moves." It looked like a ledger, but it wasn't church money. It was her life. ATM withdrawals with locations, checks with payees I didn't recognize, a line that said, "Denise says home care, but no nurse comes." At the very back, clipped with a paperclip that had rusted into the page, was a small note, Box 19B, DET, Lane. Trust her. If they say I'm confused, it's a lie. I took photos of every page and uploaded them to my cloud storage before I even stood up. Originals disappear. Devices get lost. Fires happen. But timestamps don't lie easily. When I stepped back into the hallway, I heard a floorboard creak behind me and froze so hard my teeth clicked. Nothing moved. No footsteps, no voices, just the house settling in on itself. Still, my pulse thudded like I'd been caught. That's what it feels like when you've spent days pretending everything is normal. Your body starts treating shadows like witnesses. I locked the door behind me and sat in my car for a full minute before I started the engine. Then I called Detective Lane. "I found a folder," I said, voice low. She hid it in her tax box. Notes, probate court letters, a list of money movements. Lane didn't sound surprised. "Send it," she said. When I emailed the photos, Lane called back a few minutes later. "This helps," she said. "It shows pattern. It shows intent. It also supports that she was resisting. Judges care about that, whether the elder objected." "Can you explain what the court process would have looked like?" I asked. "I need to understand how close Denise was to taking everything." Lane exhaled, the sound of someone carrying too many cases. "In probate court, a conservatorship can start as temporary," she said. "Family claims urgency. They say the elder is confused, vulnerable, at risk. They bring a doctor's note, sometimes legitimate, sometimes influenced. If the judge buys the narrative, the temporary order gives the petitioner control while the fight plays out. That window is where the worst damage happens." "And the elder?" I asked. "The elder becomes a ward," Lane said. "And if they're isolated, their objections get written down as agitation or lack of insight. Paper turns their voice into a symptom." "Paper turns their voice into a symptom." That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. Lane continued, "Your grandmother was smart. She created friction, she contested. That slowed Denise down. But Denise's didn't need full conservatorship to steal. She needed access." I stared at my steering wheel. "So what now?" I asked. "Now we keep building," Lane said. "We're not just proving access, we're proving abuse. Power of attorney abuse, attempted fraud, theft, exploitation. And we prove it with records." Records. Always records. Before we hung up, Lane said one more thing. "Ms. Brooks, you should also prepare yourself for a dirty move. When suspects get nervous, they don't just move money. They try to discredit the person telling the truth. They'll say you're emotional, unstable, greedy. They'll say you're doing this for inheritance." "I'm not," I whispered. "I know," Lane said. "But the court doesn't run on what we know. It runs on what we can show." That night, I replayed one of Miss Eve's voicemails in my kitchen, volume low. Her voice was thin, older than I wanted to admit, but clear. "Ty," she said, "if Denise tells you I'm confused, don't you believe her? She wants my money, and she wants my mouth closed. I'm still me." I stood there with the phone in my hand and realized something that made my eyes burn. My grandmother had been asking for help the only way she could, quietly, in lines and notes, in boxes and folders, in a safe deposit box. She'd been building her own case file because she knew nobody wanted to believe a sweet family story had teeth. The next morning, I stopped by the probate court downtown, under the excuse of requesting a copy of the death certificate file, something any niece could plausibly do. The clerk behind the glass was polite until I said Evelyn Brooks. Then her eyes flicked to a screen, and her smile thinned. "Are you family?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She lowered her voice. "There were petitions," she murmured. "You didn't hear it from me." "What kind?" I asked. She slid a generic form toward me. "Guardianship, conservatorship. Filed, contested, continued." It got tense. Tense was the courthouse word for war. I thanked her, took the form, and walked out, shaking, quiet. 2 days later, Denise invited me to dinner. Her voice was soft, sweet, careful. "Ty, baby, come Sunday. Don't sit in that apartment alone." I said yes, and my stomach twisted like I'd swallowed that brass key. Denise's house smelled like lemon cleaner and fried onions. A game played low on the TV. Jamal's sneakers sat by the couch. Normal staged like a set. Denise hugged me and studied my face as she pulled back. "You sleeping?" she asked. "Not much," I said. "That grief fog," she murmured, as if she'd diagnosed it. "It can make you think strange things." Strange things, the same word she used for my grandmother's warnings. At dinner, Jamal talked about opportunities and partners, all shine and no substance. Denise talked about the house and probate. "So much paperwork," she sighed, as if paperwork were weather instead of weapon. "Did Mama have a will?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Denise waved her fork. "Not the way she should have," she said. "But I'm handling probate court, keeping us out of a mess. A mess. A word meant to keep hands off." Jamal chimed in. "Auntie got a lawyer friend. It'll be smooth." "Who?" I asked. Denise's smile held, but her eyes narrowed. "Someone from church," she said. "Nothing for you to worry about." There it was, the gentle shove. Don't look, don't ask, let me carry it. After dinner, Denise pulled me into the kitchen. Her voice dropped, and the warmth drained out of it. "Ty," she said, "you didn't take anything from Mama's house, did you? We need everything for the appraiser." The question was too pointed to be about furniture. "I took a quilt," I lied. "That's it." Denise's gaze didn't blink. "Because things are missing," she said, "and Mama hid nonsense. Notes, papers. She wasn't herself." She wasn't herself, the label that gives people permission to stop listening. "She told me to ask questions," I said carefully. Denise's mouth curved. And that's why you're smart, she purred. Just don't let grief turn you against family. People out here love to whisper. They'll twist it. They'll make you look unstable. Unstable. There it was, the threat, wrapped in care. I hear you, I said softly. When I left, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I called Lane and told her Denise was probing. Lane's voice stayed calm. Good, she said. Let her probe. It means she's nervous. Over the next week, I lived two lives. By day, I went to work and answered emails about compliance policies, like my family wasn't unraveling behind my ribs. By night, I smiled at Denise's table, nodded at Jamal's stories, and asked small questions that sounded like curiosity, not accusation. In the cracks, I saw the structure. Denise had opened a joint account for convenience. She'd redirected mail. She'd sat in doctor's offices and answered questions on my grandmother's behalf. She'd collected concern notes like stamps until she had enough to wave at a judge. She'd tried power of attorney first. When it didn't unlock everything, she pivoted to guardianship language and conservatorship pressure. And Jamal was the funnel, not the mastermind, the pipeline. Money leaving Miss Eve in drips, then showing up as investments in places Jamal moved, real estate deposits, LLC fees, payments to a title company. Lane wanted the clean link, one document, one authorization, one piece of paper that put Denise's hand on Jamal's pocket. We need a nail, she told me when we met for coffee near the courthouse. An invoice, a contract, an email, something a judge can't shrug off. I thought about Denise's home office, her filing cabinet, her confidence in her own story. I can try, I said. Do not put yourself at risk, Lane warned. When predators feel cornered, family becomes dangerous. That evening, Denise asked me to come over just to talk. Her sweetness had an edge under it, like a blade wrapped in ribbon. Her curtains were drawn though it was daylight. The house smelled like bleach, as if she'd scrubbed guilt off the walls. Sit, she said. I sat on the couch, my phone recording in my pocket. Denise perched across from me, fingers folded like prayer. I feel you pulling away, she said, and it worries me. I'm grieving, I replied. Denise sighed. I know, she said, then tilted her head. But people have been asking questions, T. Probate folks, bank folks, and I don't want anyone twisting anything. Bank folks. My skin went cold. I haven't talked to anyone, I lied, and the lie tasted like metal. Denise watched my face as if she could see the truth behind my teeth. Good, she said finally. Because if outsiders get involved, it can get messy. Messy meant evidence. Then she stood and walked to her desk area, pulled a folder from a cabinet, and held it up like proof of virtue. This is what I've been doing, she said. Paying bills, handling the estate, keeping things organized. She flipped through pages quickly, too confident to notice my attention. An invoice slid into view for half a second. Horizon Path Consulting, LLC. The amount? $4,750. My pulse jumped. The name meant nothing until you recognize patterns. It matched one of the withdrawals I'd flagged, and the LLC had Jamal's fingerprints all over it. What's that? I asked lightly, pointing like I was curious, not hunting. Denise barely glanced. Jamal helped with repairs, she said. Permits, contractors, all that. It costs money. The house didn't look repaired, I said before I could stop myself. Denise's eyes snapped up, cold. You don't live there, she said. You don't know what I do. I swallowed hard and let my voice soften. You're right, I said. I'm sorry. Denise's face smoothed, satisfied. She didn't realize she'd just shown me the nail. I left with my phone still recording, my throat tight, my hands shaking. In my car, I called Lane. I got something, I whispered. Don't send it from your phone, Lane said immediately. Bring it to me. We met in a parking garage behind the courthouse. Lane sat in an unmarked car with her engine off, eyes on mirrors. I slid into the passenger seat like someone doing a handoff in a bad movie. Except this was my family, and the stakes were my grandmother's dignity. I transferred the audio file to Lane's secure device. She listened with a stillness that made her look carved out of stone. When Denise's voice said Jamal helped with repairs, when the LLC name appeared, Lane's mouth tightened in something like satisfaction. "This helps," she said. "This helps a lot." "What happens now?" I asked. Lane opened a folder and showed me a draft warrant request. Miss Eve's notarized statement, the bank's records, the forged signature suspicion, the safe deposit box contents, my recordings, the invoice mention. The story had weight now, the kind a judge can't ignore. "We're going to request warrants for Denise's home and devices," Lane said, "and for Jamal's business records. We'll freeze accounts if we can. We secure the box. We stop the bleeding." "Will you arrest them?" My voice came out small. Lane's eyes were steady. "If the judge signs and the evidence holds," she said. "Yes." I expected relief. I felt grief, because there's no clean victory in watching your family turn into suspects. Lane read my face. "This isn't your fault," she said. "It feels like I'm betraying my blood," I whispered. Lane shook her head. "They betrayed her first," she said. "You're just naming it." That night, Denise called again. Her voice was too sweet, too careful, as if she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "Ty," she said, "we need to meet. Tomorrow. Just us." My skin went cold. I didn't answer. I forwarded the text she sent afterward. "We need to talk about loyalty," to Lane. Lane replied within a minute. "Do not go. Keep your phone on." Then a second message followed, crisp as a gavel. "Tomorrow, 7 a.m., warrants. Both locations. Do not warn anyone. 7 a.m. the hour." Denise loved because she believed other people were too sleepy to fight back. I lay in bed with my shoes by the door and my phone charging, listening to the city breathe outside my window. Around midnight, Jamal knocked on my door. Surprise visits. The oldest trick in the family playbook. When I opened it, he stood there with a bag of takeout like an offering, smiling too wide. His eyes swept past me into my apartment before I even stepped aside. "'Cause," he said, "thought I'd check on you." He didn't sit down until he'd scanned my space, my laptop, my bookshelf, the framed photo of Miss Eve and me at a church picnic. He lingered on my laptop like it could confess. "Auntie worried," he said casually. "She says you've been distant." "I'm grieving," I said. "We all grieving," he echoed, then leaned forward, voice dropping. "But grief can make you do impulsive stuff. Talking to folks, asking questions, stirring up drama." The word drama was a cage. Put the truth inside it, and people stopped taking it seriously. "I haven't stirred anything," I said. Jamal smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "Good," he said. "Because I'd hate for you to look crazy." Crazy. The family's favorite weapon. My mouth went dry. "I'm not crazy," I said softly. He stood and picked up the framed photo, studying it with a tenderness that looked practiced. "Grandma loved you," he said. "So don't dishonor her by tearing the family apart. Love as a leash." I nodded because acting normal sometimes looks like swallowing poison. "I don't want to tear anything apart," I said. Jamal set the photo down and smiled like he'd finished his job. "Then keep it in-house," he said. When the door closed behind him, I sank onto the couch and realized my hands were shaking hard enough to blur my vision. They were hunting. They didn't know what I had, but they knew I had something. The safe deposit box key hadn't been in the trash. Denise had tried to access the box before, and now the bank had spoken to someone, maybe not Denise directly, but the ripple had reached her. I called Lane and told her Jamal came by. Lane's voice was clipped. "Do not answer your door again unless you know who it is," she said. "We're close." Close. At 3 in the morning, Denise texted again. "Tomorrow, just us. Loyalty." I stared at the word loyalty until it stopped looking like English and started looking like a threat. 7 a.m. was coming. Somewhere across town, Denise was probably awake too, cleaning, shredding, rehearsing, convinced she could outsmart the law the way she'd outsmarted doctors and family. But my grandmother had already placed the pieces, and Detective Lane was about to make the next move. At 6:52 a.m., my phone buzzed with a single line from Detective Lane. On position. Stay inside. I sat on the edge of my bed fully dressed, shoes laced, hair pulled back, as if neatness could protect me. Outside, Cleveland was still half dark, the kind of pre-dawn gray that makes streetlights look tired. At 6:59, Lane called. "Do not answer any calls," she said. "Do not text anyone back. If they reach you, you don't know anything. Understood?" "Yes," I whispered. "You're about to hear some noise," she said. Let it happen. A few minutes later, the building's front door took 3 heavy knocks, then more, louder, official. I pressed my forehead to the window and watched 2 unmarked cars idle at the curb. A third vehicle rolled in slow and silent, like it didn't want to wake the neighborhood. It wasn't my door they wanted. Not today. My phone buzzed again. "Search team in. Denise in custody. Jamal detained at office. Stay put. Denise in custody." A sentence that felt impossible yesterday while we were still passing paper plates of funeral cake. At 7:26, Lane called again. I expected triumph. She sounded tired. "We got it," she said. "And you need to come in." "Now?" "Now," she confirmed. "While the evidence is fresh." Downtown, the Financial Crimes Unit office smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner, bureaucracy's signature scent. Lane met me at the door, blazer still crisp, eyes slightly bloodshot. "They tried to run a shredder," she said as we walked. "Denise, first thing, claimed it was junk mail." Old junk, her favorite hymn. Lane led me into an interview room and handed me water. "You want details?" she asked. I nodded. "Denise opened the door in her robe like she practiced innocence," Lane said. "She tried the same line she used at the bank. Your grandmother was confused. She was just helping. Then we showed her the safe deposit box inventory and the denied access report. Her face slipped. What did she do?" "Got angry," Lane said. "Predators hate being told no." Lane slid photos across the table. Denise's home office with drawers pulled open, a filing cabinet stuffed with tabs, and a shoebox labeled medical. "That's hers," I murmured. "And we found more," Lane said. "Draft petitions for probate court conservatorship, notes about what to say to doctors, a checklist titled capacity, like it was a grocery list." My throat tightened. She planned to make my grandmother a ward. "She planned to control her," Lane corrected. "That's common in conservatorship fraud. File, frighten, isolate, repeat." She flipped to another page. "Power of attorney forms," she said. "Multiple versions. Some signed, some blank. Notaries all over the place." "Forged?" "We'll let the analyst say it," Lane replied. "But the signatures don't match." "And Jamal?" I asked. Lane's mouth tightened. "We hit his office at the same time. He was pitching Horizon Path Consulting." The name hit me like a slap. "We seized his laptop, phones, and drives," Lane continued. "We found transfers that tie him to your grandmother's accounts, not just receiving, initiating, scheduling. He wasn't passive, he was an operator." "He came to my place last night," I said. Lane's eyes sharpened. "We pulled the building footage. He was checking your temperature." I swallowed. "He said I'd look crazy." "That's the play," Lane said. "Discredit the person telling the truth. In elder financial abuse cases, it's almost standard. Paint you greedy, unstable, vindictive." Lane stopped pacing and looked straight at me. "We need your statement today," she said. "Denise has already been calling relatives saying you're having a breakdown." I let out one sharp laugh. "She didn't waste time." "No," Lane said. "She's trying to control the narrative in real time." My statement took an hour. Dates, phrases, the funeral, the torn envelope, the brass key, the trash can, the bank manager saying, "Call the police." When it was done, my voice felt scraped raw. Lane collected my signature, then slid another paper forward. Victim witness agreement, she said. You cooperate, we keep you informed, and you don't contact them. I signed without hesitation. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed. By afternoon, charges were filed. Attempted fraud, exploitation of an elderly adult, forgery, identity theft. The words looked clean, but they described something intimate. A daughter stealing from the woman who raised her, then calling it care. That evening, my phone lit up with unknown numbers like mosquitoes. Then came the messages. Why are you doing this? Family should stay family. Denise says you're confused and hurting. Confused, hurting. The same vocabulary she tried to staple to my grandmother. I didn't reply. Lane had told me, silence is safety. Still, every message felt like a fingertip pressing on a bruise. 2 days later, we stood in Cuyahoga County Court for the preliminary hearing. The courtroom was overcooled, like they wanted emotion to dry out before it hit the floor. Denise walked in wearing cream and wounded dignity. Her wrists were free, bail posted by someone who still believed her. When she saw me, her eyes didn't plead. They warned. Jamal came in behind her, suit too tight, jaw clenched. When his gaze met mine, he flicked away fast, like truth was too bright. The prosecutor laid out the spine. The bank fraud investigation report, the flagged safe deposit box, the denied access attempt with a forged power of attorney, the seized records and transfers, the probate court paperwork, and capacity checklist. Denise's attorney leaned hard on age. Evelyn Brooks was elderly. He said smoothly. She had memory issues. Ms. Caldwell acted out of love and necessity. Love and necessity. 2 words that have covered more crimes than any ski mask. The judge bound the case over for trial. No drama. Just a signature and a date. Paper again, moving the world. After the hearing, Lane walked me to the elevator and kept her voice low. Now comes the part that breaks people, she said. Waiting. Waiting sounded passive, but it wasn't. It was work. Hours of not reacting, not defending myself, not chasing every rumor. Denise had spent years teaching the neighborhood to see her as a saint. She wasn't going to let a judge's signature dismantle that overnight. Within a week, Denise filed an emergency motion in probate court claiming she needed immediate authority to secure Evelyn Brooks's assets and prevent interference by estranged relatives. Estranged. That word was a knife dressed up as etiquette. The probate judge denied it after seeing the criminal case number, but the attempt told me something important. Denise didn't just want money, she wanted the last word. Then the backlash hit. My phone filled with messages telling me to forgive, to pray, to remember blood. People who hadn't visited my grandmother in years suddenly had opinions about family business. I learned how loneliness works in cases of elder financial exploitation. The perpetrator builds a small army out of politeness and fear, and then turns it on the person telling the truth. Lane kept me grounded in facts. Feelings don't matter to the bank, she'd say. They matter to you. But juries need records. So we built them. The flash drive from the safe deposit box was worse than I expected. It wasn't just statements. It was a system. Folders labeled by month, spreadsheets with color-coded withdrawals, scans of checks, and audio files with dates in the titles. Miss Eve had recorded Denise one night in the kitchen, voice trembling but clear. Stop asking me to sign things I can't read. Denise's reply came smooth as syrup. Mama, don't start. You get confused and then you get ugly. Hearing it made my stomach clench, not because it shocked me, because it proved she knew exactly what she was doing. There were also emails between Denise and Jamal about moving funds quietly, about keeping transfers under certain thresholds, about what they called the noise line. Jamal typed, "We keep it under the noise line. Nobody looks." Denise replied, "Make it look like care. Bills, supplies, always. If anyone asks, she's declining. Make it look like care." That sentence was the whole crime. The prosecutor obtained Denise's care receipts, stacks of them, neatly filed. The problem was the patterns. The same vendor names repeating, the same amounts, the same days that matched cash withdrawals from my grandmother's account. Paperwork designed to pass a quick glance, not a deep one. That's what Miss Eve taught me. The crime isn't in the big numbers. It's in the small, repeated deviations that someone hopes you're too tired to track. Denise tried to reach me once from a blocked number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail anyway. Sweet, tearful, wounded. "Ty, baby," she sobbed. "I don't know who got in your ear, but you're destroying us. Mama would be ashamed. Call me. Let's fix this like family." Fix this like family meant, let me bury it. I sent the voicemail to Lane and deleted it from my phone like it was contaminated. Waiting wasn't passive. Waiting was holding the line while people begged you to move it. By the time discovery closed, Lane had me under a protective order and a strict rule. Vary routes, save every message, and never be alone with them. In a true life drama, safety looks like boring habits every single day. The months that followed were a slow grind. Subpoenas, bank statements, phone extractions. A handwriting analyst compared Denise's documents to my grandmother's known signature and called the differences consistent with simulation. A medical expert reviewed records and noted how often Denise answered questions for Miss Eve, and how often agitation appeared when my grandmother objected. Then came the offer, through an intermediary, like shame. Jamal wanted leniency. He'd testify against Denise. He'd say he was manipulated, that he didn't understand what he was signing. Lane read the proposal aloud, then looked at me. "They'll listen to you," she said. I pictured Jamal in my apartment, telling me to keep it in-house, loyalty like a leash. "He understood enough to threaten me," I said. "He understood enough to cash it." Lane nodded once. "That's what I thought." Trial began in late winter, when Cleveland's wind feels personal. Denise sat at the defense table in soft colors, Bible on the bench like a prop. Jamal sat beside his attorney, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the floor. The prosecution opened with the bank. Mr. Reed testified about the safe deposit box, the flagged hold, and the denied attempt using power of attorney paperwork that didn't verify. Then Lane testified. She laid the case out clean. Elder financial exploitation, forged signatures, attempted fraud, the capacity checklist as a blueprint. When it was my turn, the witness stand felt like a spotlight I never asked for. The prosecutor asked me to tell the jury about my grandmother. So I did. Ledgers and gospel music, the way she believed paper tells the truth when people won't. Then the funeral, the key, the trash can, and the manager's quiet sentence. "Call the police." The defense tried to rattle me. "Isn't it true?" Denise's attorney asked. "You stand to inherit more if your aunt is removed?" I looked at him and felt my grandmother's steadiness settle in my chest. "I stood to inherit my grandmother's voice," I said, "and someone tried to steal it." Closing arguments didn't need theatrics. The evidence wasn't one smoking gun. It was 1,000 consistent cuts, records, forged power of attorney attempts, probate court pressure, cash withdrawals near Denise's home, LLC transfers tied to Jamal, and my grandmother's notarized statement saying, in plain language, "I am not confused. They are taking my money." The jury returned before the day ended. Denise held Jamal's hand like a mother comforting a child, and the irony almost made me sick. The foreperson stood. "On count 1, exploitation of an elderly adult, we find the defendant, Denise Caldwell, guilty." Count after count followed. Guilty. Then Jamal's. Guilty on conspiracy, guilty on fraud, guilty on theft. I expected triumph. What I felt was quiet completion, like a long-held breath finally leaving my lungs. As deputies led Denise away, she twisted toward me, mask gone. "This is your fault," she hissed. And in that moment, I heard my grandmother's final lesson as clearly as a hymn. Truth doesn't need permission from family. Outside the courthouse, the wind cut hard, but my chest felt strangely clear. Lane walked beside me, hands in her coat pockets. "You did right," she said. I nodded once, because words felt too small. Then my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. A single sentence. You think this is over? The message sat on my screen like a wet fingerprint. You think this is over? No name. No number I recognized. Just a sentence meant to crawl under your skin and live there. For a second, my hands went cold the way they had in that bank lobby. When Mr. Reed said, "Call the police." The same feeling, your life tilting, the floor shifting under a story you thought had ended. Detective Lane glanced over. Don't reply, she said. I screenshotted it, sent it to her, and blocked the number. Lane nodded like she'd filed it where it belonged. Intimidation, she said. Sometimes it's a cousin. Sometimes it's Denise using somebody else's phone. We document. We don't dance. The courthouse steps behind us were slick with salt and old snow. Cleveland's wind cut between buildings like it knew where people kept their weak seams. I pulled my coat tighter and tried to tell my body the worst part was over. But the truth about elder financial exploitation is this. The theft ends long before the aftershock does. In the weeks after the verdict, the state moved on the money. Accounts were frozen. Properties purchased through Horizon Path Consulting and Jamal's other shell names were seized. The prosecutor filed for asset forfeiture, and the judge signed orders with the same quiet efficiency my grandmother trusted. Paper making reality, one line at a time. On paper, the numbers looked clean again. In real life, everything still felt bruised. Denise wrote her first letter before she even reached state custody. Heavy envelope, neat cursive, like borrowing my grandmother's manners could borrow her innocence. You ungrateful child, it began. 4 pages of blame dressed up as scripture. Denise claimed she sacrificed everything caring for Mama. She claimed Jamal was the real problem. She claimed I'd been manipulated by outsiders. Then she ended with a demand. Visit me. Fix this. Bring the family back together. Family, the way she used the word, sounded less like love and more like ownership. I scanned the letter for Lane. Then I filed it and didn't answer. Jamal tried a different angle through his attorney. Soft apologies, hints of cooperation. The suggestion he was just a pawn. Lane asked if I wanted to hear it. I pictured Jamal in my doorway with takeout and a smile, warning me I'd look crazy if I talked. I pictured the flash drive files. Keep it under the noise line. Make it look like care. Tell him no, I said. Truth isn't a bargain. Lane's mouth softened, just barely. Good, she said. That's how patterns stop. Because it was always a pattern. Power of attorney abuse. Probate court conservatorship threats. Forged signatures. Isolation disguised as devotion. A system built on one ugly idea. If you control the story, you control the person. 6 months later, restitution came back in slow, uneven drips. Not everything could be recovered. Some cash was gone forever, spent on things that left no receipts, but enough returned that my grandmother's last move didn't feel wasted. The first thing I paid off was my student loans. I know that sounds plain, but it felt like cutting a chain. Miss Eve hated debt. Debt makes you quiet, she used to say. It makes you tolerate nonsense. When the last payment cleared, I made coffee the way she made it. Strong, no sugar, no excuses. And I let the quiet settle. Then I built something that would outlive the noise. In early spring, I signed a lease on a narrow storefront in Ohio City, not far from the market. Tall windows, creaky floors. A back room that smelled like old wood and possibility. The realtor talked about foot traffic. I thought about my grandmother's dining table lamp, the warm circle it made over ledgers and truth. I named it The Key and the Ledger. A reminder that the smallest objects, a brass key, a handwritten note, a single off number, can crack open a hidden life. The front became a bookstore and reading room. The back became a small table, 2 chairs, and a promise. If you're being rushed to sign something you don't understand, you can sit here and read it first. No fee, no shame, just light, time, and a second set of eyes. We kept brochures on elder financial abuse, safe ways to use a power of attorney, and where to report suspected exploitation. The first woman who came in carried papers in a plastic grocery bag. Her nephew had called it help with bills. She was 78, sharp, and terrified of being labeled difficult. "I don't want trouble," she whispered. "You're not making trouble," I told her. "You're preventing it." We read every line. We found the clause that gave full account access. We found the language that could have sold her home without her knowing. When she realized it, her face didn't look confused. It looked betrayed. After she left, I sat in the back room and cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I finally understood the size of what my grandmother had been fighting. She wasn't just defending her money. She was defending her right to be believed. Denise's sentencing happened in a plain courtroom with plain words. The judge called it what it was: exploitation, fraud, calculated manipulation. Denise stood with her chin lifted, as if posture could substitute for innocence. When the judge read the years, Denise looked at me like I'd stolen something from her. In a way, I had. I had taken back the story. Jamal's sentence was shorter, but the restitution order followed him like a shadow. The court's message was simple: you don't get to profit just because your victim shares your blood. On the 1-year anniversary of Miss Eve's death, I placed her photo in the key and the ledger, sun hat tilted, smile stubborn. Beneath it, I mounted a small plaque with her favorite line: "Paper tells the truth when people won't." A month after the shop opened, Detective Lane stopped by. No badge out, no blazer, just a woman with tired eyes and coffee in hand. She wandered the aisles, ran a finger along a shelf, and paused at the little table in the back like she was measuring whether it could hold what people bring. "This is good work," she said quietly. "It feels small," I admitted. Lane shook her head. "Small is where these cases start," she said. "A nephew helping, a daughter managing, a signature that doesn't feel right. Most victims never get to a flagged account or a safe deposit box. They get labeled forgetful, and the world stops listening." She looked at Miss Eve's photo again. "Your grandmother understood something most people don't," Lane continued. "Proof is mercy. It gives the truth somewhere to stand." When she left, she pressed a card into my palm, her line, and said, "If anyone tries it again in this neighborhood, call me. We don't wait for it to get loud." I taped that card inside the drawer under the desk lamp, right where Miss Eve would have kept it. Some evenings, when the shop was empty and the city noise softened, I'd sit by the window and watch the streetlights blink on. The world looked ordinary again. Cars passing, someone laughing, a dog pulling its owner down the sidewalk. And in that ordinariness, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: safety. Not the naive kind, the earned kind, built on boundaries, documentation, and the refusal to let love be used as a blindfold. The unknown message never came again. Or maybe it did, and Lane caught it before it reached me. Either way, it stopped mattering. Because the real threat had never been a text. The threat was silence. My grandmother refused it. And in doing so, she handed me a blueprint. Notice the deviations, document the truth, and wait until the moment is right to move. If you're listening and something in your life doesn't add up, an accident that keeps repeating, a relative who rushes you, a document you're told not to read, pause. Ask questions. Get a second set of eyes. Elder financial exploitation thrives on shame and speed. You deserve time. You deserve clarity. You deserve to write your own story. If this story hit your heart, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Like the video to help it reach someone who needs it. And in the comments, tell me what city you're watching from and what time it is right now, because I want to see how far Miss Eve's last key traveled. I've put 2 more stories on the screen for you. Tap one and let's keep going together.